to Baltimore. Teams moved on. The Raiders moved on and did so many deals. And now they have to account for the fact that Maxx Crosby is apparently still on their roster and is going to be on their roster, at least for now. And all of the teams that moved on and made deals thinking they had lost out on Maxx Crosby now are potentially back in the mix for Maxx Crosby if they can figure out a way to make that deal, given all the other deals they have made in the hours since then. It is it is just mind-bending that this trade has fallen through and that everybody goes back to square one and has to figure out where they go from here.
So the Raiders, you talking about the deal. I mean, the deal for Tyler Linderbaum, who was with the Ravens last year, that they feel like we can absolutely blow this thing out of the water because we've got to get to our minimum spend, which you have to do based on the salary cap. There's a ceiling and there's a floor you've got to get to. And so they're like, we got all this money to spend and we've got the ability to blow the Ravens out of the water because of this trade, in large part because that money for Maxx Crosby can now be budgeted elsewhere. Now that's got to affect it. And the Ravens think, are we back in it for Tyler Linderbaum? Because not only the trades, any verbal agreement between agents and players and teams as far as free agents are also not binding until tomorrow. So those are not signed, and they could be backed out of as well. It's not great business. It's not the way you want to do things. Frank Gore a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago with the Eagles, had agreed there and then backed out before he signed the deal. It can happen. I keep saying the word ripple effects. The ripple effects of this one over the next day or week in NFL business. And then, Ian, go back to what you talked about at the Super Bowl, which was because of Maxx Crosby's surgery, potentially the trade itself could have been pushed to closer to the draft while he recovered from the knee surgery. And people say, well, you're confident he's going to be able to come back from that. Well, clearly in this case, the Ravens say, no, not the case.
Which makes you wonder about everybody's timeline in this, because the surgery, which was on January 7th, wasn't some secret. Like, everybody knew that Maxx Crosby had meniscus surgery. The thing that people don't know is what is going on right now in the past 35 minutes. So a future Hall of Famer, J.J. Watt, says, wait, what happened with the Maxx Crosby trade? Which is the general reaction. Isaiah Rodgers says, dang, free agency crazy, laughing out loud. Hashtag LV and Ravens. Our friend the Nick Shook is saying, man, what? What? Trending on multiple social media sites and applications on the day. And Ian Rapoport succinctly pointing out, wagging his finger at the entire planet, trades are not official until the league year begins, as Ian reminding everybody more than aware of that right now. And so we've got this recovery timeline, Tom, that's going on. That's been a consistent thing. Is once again, it was a January 7th meniscus repair surgery for Maxx Crosby, who didn't finish the season for the Las Vegas Raiders. We're assuming other teams will be interested, and we've yet to hear at this point, 22 minutes after the Raiders send out the announcement, anything from Baltimore.
Well, at this point, I would say this. The reaction from other people within the NFL that I am getting is predominantly about how the Ravens pulled the rug out, regardless of what their reasoning was. This just does not happen. It has happened on multiple other occasions in the past on much smaller trades or agreements involving the Ravens. However, when you're talking about trading 2 first-round picks, this is not an unknown issue in the NFL. Clearly, they came to the conclusion that there was something they were not comfortable with. And again, it does bear mentioning. 32 teams, 32 doctors, 32 degrees of risk tolerance. What one team might be willing to accept, whether it's in the draft process, a free agent signing, a trade, is something that another team might say, we're simply not going to go there. That's why every year, and we're going through the pre-draft process right now, you'll hear about players having medical flags. There might be 31 teams who say, we won't pass this guy. We won't put a uniform on him. But if one team is willing to do it, then that player is going to play in the NFL. Maxx Crosby is a known commodity with a known injury. Clearly, something happened. He was in Baltimore today, posting on social media, obviously went through a medical process, after which the Ravens, for one reason or another, and again, to your point, we have not heard from the Ravens to this point, the Ravens decided we are not following through with this trade. It does not happen often in the NFL. It definitely does not happen at this level, this type of a blockbuster trade. Maxx Crosby, once again, is on the Raiders. He is right back on the trade block. Other teams, again, I will emphasize this, the Cowboys would remain interested. They were the runner-up to the Ravens.
Well,
other teams that I'm calling, I'm missing the calls right now from other teams trying to figure out what's going on because all the other pass rushers have gotten agreements. Do the Ravens now, who didn't get a pass rusher, try to flip one of those players that agreed to a deal someplace else because now they need another pass rusher for that defense? There are so many different tentacles to this. We never see this happen. It is going to be a free agency frenzy that has now gone into a physical frenzy. How about that, Patrick Claybon, on a Tuesday night?
Yeah, we're doing it. We're live. We're back and talking about it. And everything has changed necessarily, including perhaps, Ian, the ultimate trade compensation price for Maxx Crosby, which most notably was this 2 first-round picks. Now we've had this circumstance transpire. You wonder, is it going to be significantly altered? Because the Ravens were already at the top regardless. What do you think it goes to now, or can we even know anything considering how frenzical this is, as Tom points out?
I want to make 2 points. One, talk about the trade compensation. You know, the Ravens saying that the trade is off means that the trade they agreed to of 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby is off. Can they agree to different compensation? Of course they can. They have plenty of time, and they could decide to do it. Now, the Raiders were set on Maxx Crosby being worth 2 first-round picks. Do they accept less now to complete a trade? Do they say, okay, no, this is a sign that we're going to stay with him? Tom mentioned the Cowboys being potentially interested in Maxx Crosby still. From my understanding, they are interested. Tom is right. But with what they've done now, it's hard to understand if this is something they can actually really do. They've already allocated the resources. They've made other trades. They've spent other money. They can't unfurl all of that unless they want to go back on their word, and teams don't really like to do that. Plus, if there's a physical, Mike, that the Ravens aren't comfortable with, does another team do this and take a risk on a physical still? There's some answers. The trade is off, but there's a lot more questions.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, I'm just having brief conversations here as best I can with people who are trying to figure it out. And they're saying, well, now anybody that goes back to the Raiders on this one uses this as leverage in negotiations. So forget about 2 first-round picks at this point, I would say, especially because the Ravens were the team that did it and felt like they needed to do it to get the deal done because nobody else was willing to go there. So already that was the benchmark for the other 30 teams. Now you add this failed physical in. And again, it's not like, oh, the Ravens failed physical means 30 other teams are also going to fail. And we cannot possibly make that any clearer at this point. It's just how much risk are you willing to take? And again, teams are going to use that as far as leverage goes in this deal, even not just to protect themselves, but also to get the best possible deal in a potential trade with the Raiders here. And the other, the other part of this that's still a possibility, I guess, look, this is fresh and just happening and everybody's trying to figure it out, is the Raiders were saying, just like the Eagles with A.J. Brown, we're only trading this guy if we get our asking price met. Could they potentially just turn around and say, hey, we'd love to just welcome you back, right? We're back to the point of we've got an idea for what your value is, for what you mean to a team, and if nobody gets there, then you're a Raider again because he said all the right things in his goodbye and potentially could be back with the team. There's a whole lot left to unfold, which means keep it locked on NFL Network.
Yes, we've talked extensively during the frenzy about all of the Raiders' acquisitions, and now perhaps they get their best acquisition, the edge rusher, Maxx Crosby. Thanks to Tom Pelissero, Judy Batista, Ian Rapoport, Mike Garafolo. We'll be back with more free agency frenzy, as if it could get more frenzical, coming up tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on NFL Network. That's our breaking news from the NFL LA newsroom. Maxx Crosby deal, according to the Raiders, is
breaking news from the NFL. In a stunning development, the Ravens have backed out of the trade for star pass rusher Maxx Crosby. The Raiders announced the news but did not offer any more details. Last week, the Ravens acquired the 5-time Pro Bowler and a blockbuster for 2 first-round picks in a move that was supposed to improve their pass rush considerably, but now the deal is off. For more, I'm joined by CBS Sports NFL analyst Emery Hunt. Emery, this is a big news. You don't often see a trade fall apart of this magnitude of a player like Maxx Crosby, who, it's no secret, he was dealing with meniscus issues last season. He had knee surgery, but according to our insider Jonathan Jones, the Ravens just didn't like what they saw with the medical.
Yeah, and that's big because the Ravens wanted this move. They wanted a pass rusher. They need a pass rusher. So it tells you what they saw was significant in that regard. But I really worry about the long term because the ramifications of that is okay, what other team will want to make this trade? But what would their doctors say? And now you put those team doctors in a situation where it's like, okay, are we going to follow what the Ravens did? Because usually you see the same thing or close to it. Now, how comfortable will you feel to make that move? Or do you back out of it? And can those fences be mended with the Raiders and Maxx Crosby to where he can stay on the football team? Because obviously they would trust their medical expertise on this situation. They had him there for his entire career. And do you find a way to get him at a lower number and renegotiate his contract to where you can fit all those people you signed to those contracts?
Yeah, and as you mentioned too, I mean, another team doctor might see the same thing the Ravens did and say, hey, well, maybe it's not worth giving up 2 firsts for this, but maybe, a different haul in the compensation to get a player of that caliber who's still talented. A lot of people, though, positing, hey, Maxx Crosby off the books for the Ravens. Do they pursue Trey Hendrickson? He's a player, though, who's had injury issues of his own.
Right, and that's the other part of it, because now you wonder, okay, well, how much can we get out of Trey Hendrickson for a full 17-game season? And if you're Trey Hendrickson, you say, okay, well, now I know you're desperate. My price has gone up now, because you probably was going to think about getting him at a discount, but now he's looking at, I have leverage now. I can ask for this. I can ask for X, Y, Z, and that increases his bank account in terms of Baltimore, who's now desperate. Or if you're the Ravens, you can just sit out and say, you know what? We have the 14th pick. We'll go and draft someone in this year's draft that can be that pass rusher that we need at a younger, healthier cost than Trey Hendrickson. You either take this deal or leave it. You also don't want to price yourself out of it if you're Trey Hendrickson. So that's the dance we'll see people dance now, because Hendrickson just gained leverage on teams that may want him as opposed to Maxx Crosby. And also the Ravens can be like, hey, we got a high enough pick to where we can go and make a move and get what we want.
Right, because of course that number 14 pick no longer going to the Raiders in that trade if the trade is off. When you look at what the potential options are for Maxx Crosby, though, senior NFL insider Jonathan Jones did mention that the Cowboys had been in the mix in that negotiation process before that trade with the Ravens came to pass. Do you think, if you're a Cowboys front office, this medical and this causing the Ravens to back out gives you pause of repursuing that, or do you jump back in and say, okay, let's get back in this mix?
This is Jerry Jones we're talking about.
That's true.
This is Big D. This is Dallas. This is the Stars. This is the lights. This is the bright, Texas sun. And this is the hole in the roof to where a guy can watch his favorite team play. Of course, they're going to be back in the mix. Now, Ravens had pick 14. Dallas have that, I think it's pick 20 in terms of their second first-round pick. That may be more attractive to the Raiders. It may be more attractive to Dallas. They may not even have to come up off a first-round pick dealing with this injury. Like, hey, we can take this trade with a second-round pick as opposed to a first-round pick. But to say, will Dallas be injured? Will Jerry Jones want the story? Come and save the day? Exactly.
Yeah,
come
fair.
On now. Of course. I could see him in that seafoam out there rushing the passer. But for Maxx Crosby, it's about being healthy. Right. He has to get 100% ready to go. I don't know what it takes to pass a physical after you just failed one, but we'll see if other team doctors will look past what the Ravens saw enough to where they say, yeah, no deal.
Yeah, and if you're Jerry Jones and you're looking at this as an opportunity to get a deal, right? The Raiders are in a position where they're holding the bag and they got to get rid of something. They've agreed to a lot of contracts in free agency and they can't have it all. So we'll see what happens next as the story continues to unfold. Emery Hunt, thanks so much for the insight. Maxx Crosby gets to the quarterback quite a bit. As we look at the most seasons with 10 or more sacks in Raiders history, Crosby's done it 4 times, second to only Greg Townsend. Quarterbacks hate to see that man coming. We're continuing to break down this breaking news. The